Hello world, I'm back again with you. And today we're going to be taking an idea and making it into a full-on add-on. So what is this idea? What are we doing? One of my interests, one of the things that I really like to explore in Blender, other than obviously the coding stuff, is the NPR toon shading, sort of that cartoon look. The looks kind of like a 2D or a hand-drawn, there's like the outlines on it and what would you call it, banded shading, toon shading. That's a style that I really like. So I find there's a lot of time that I will, start a new Blender scene and I'll just want to create a basic toon shader, basic outline, and slap it on this object. So we're going to create an add-on that does that. It just takes this small part of our workflow and locks it all up into a button. And then we can, once we have the basic thing down, then we can start looking at kind of making it more advanced and customizing it. So how do we do this? We're going to, I'm just going to add a text object just to do a little bit of writing. So this is where we, we're brainstorming. So we want the Toon Shader. So how do we go about doing that? Well, we need to create a toon material, let's say. And then, like I said, we'll also have to create an outline material. And if you've done this before, you probably know that outline materials, let's just get this out of here. You'll know that outline materials need a Solidify modifier, or at least that's one way to do it. So we'll need to add a Solidify modifier. Okay, and what else do we need to do? Oh, well, yeah, well, obviously we'll need to apply the materials to the object that we have selected. So apply to object, and maybe that's good. Oh, no, you know what? There's one more thing. Let's say that somebody wants to try this in solid view mode. A toon shader is not really going to do too much in solid view or even in material view, really, because part of the way it works is it's depending on the light and the angle of the light, the intensity of the light to generate, what area is in light and what is in shadow, or your highlights, your midtones, and your shadows, basically. So we want to make sure that we are in a viewport mode where if somebody clicks it, they actually see what we're doing. It's not one of those like, I don't think this add-on works. I don't think this. So we'll need to make sure viewport is displaying it. This isn't code. This is just a basic idea for something, a workflow I've done before. So, it'll get a little more abstract if you're just kind of brainstorming something like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if, it could do this, whatever. It may not be that you know exactly the steps to do it first. You kind of maybe have to go a little abstract and then start experimenting. But this is a good outline for us, and this gives us a pretty good direction from where to start. So we need to know how to create a toon material. And like I said, we're going to be doing that with Bippy, with Python. Just going to put the cube back in the center. Yeah, well, how do we start this off? Well, you know what? Let's start off with a classic. And let's talk about something that, if we're going to make this an add-on, there's one thing that we didn't really talk about before, and that is the BL info. So there's a thing that separates a script from an add-on, and I was kind of using them interchangeably in previous videos, but what makes this an add-on and what makes something that you're able to go, edit, let's go up there, edit preferences, add-ons, install, and then you see all the options for it here. It shows up in here. That needs this thing called a BL info, and BL info is a dict. BL underscore. Actually, I think we can even put it. I don't think it needs to be imported by Bippy. I think it can just live at the top of the file. BL info equals, and if it's a dict, we use curly braces. And because this one is going to be many lines, I'm just going to enter twice, and then I'll go back up into this little middle section. So tab to indent, and the first one is going to be name. And name is the key, and the value is going to be whatever you want the add-on's name to be. So I'm going to call this add-on Toon Up. There we go, and comma, and then you're going to go to the next line, and the next line is going to be author, and this is your name. So I will say specs. You can say doodles, or, you know, whatever your name is. Because this is just like a line of text that is going to show up, and, you know, where is this going to show up? Let's take a look at what it turns into. So we go here, and we see file, author, version, then there's an internet tab, location, description, title up here. So this is what we're creating right now with BL info. And like I said, this is necessary for something to be an add-on and not just a script. We'll say Waldo. I like that. Then you're going to do version. So version. And this is the version of your add-on. So I am going to, oh, actually, you know what? It doesn't go in quotes, does it?
Damn it!
It's just brackets. So yeah, this is the version of your add-on. So since this is the very first version of this, I'm going to call it 0, 0, 1. And so if you're new to the whole software thing, you might be looking at this and going like, what is going on here? So we've got a group of 3 numbers, and this is something that you're just going to be assigning to yourself, really. What I tend to use each of these numbers for, and you'll kind of see this in other pieces. This is not like a thing I invented. You'll see this in other software as well. I'll use this number to the furthest right for the smallest changes. So let's say I write a big script and I upload it and I'm like, yep, it's all good to go. Everybody use it. And then I'm doing another test and I go, oh my goodness, I made a spelling mistake. There's this one function out of the whole thing that doesn't work because I spelled transform as transform again, or I misspelled primitive like I always do. You know, you correct a spelling mistake, you fix up some small things, whatever. That I would consider one of these kind of like the far right releases. You'd add a number to that. So you started at 001, you go to 002. If you add a feature, let's say you add a whole new function, a whole new class, you add a whole new button, a whole new operator, maybe that qualifies as one of these releases. So it would become 0.1.0 or 0.1.1 or, you know, however it goes. And then if you hit a point where you're like, you know what, I've learned way more about how this whole process is supposed to work. I rewrote the whole thing. It's way more efficient. It's way better than it was when I first started. That's when you would use the furthest to the left. And then that would maybe be like your 1.0 release or your 2.0 release. So like I said, this is just the very first version of this. So I'm calling it 001 version. That's your version or the version of your add-on. Next, we have Blender. And this is going to be the Blender version that it's for. So typically this will be, whichever version of Blender you're working in. There is a fair bit of back compatibility in the BIPI API, but there are breaking changes, and you can find those. Let's see. Oh, right. Okay. All right. So it's wiki.blender.org. This is what I was looking for. Python and API. So yeah, you'll see changes, breaking changes, other additions. So possibly, if you're working in, like I am, you're working in 3.2, you might be working with something that wasn't added in 2.8 or 2.7, whatever it is. So typically you'll just make this the same, version as what you're working in. And how do you know what version you're working in? we can find it with d.version in the console, 30,40. So I'm just going to copy that, and I'm going to put it up here. Rockin' and rollin'. Next up, we have location. What's location? That's where it's going to go in Blender's user interface. So we'll say view 3D. What do we call it? Sidebar. N panel. Rock and roll. Okay, description we shall have next. And this is that thing that pops up that shows you, or that has a little description of what your add-on does. Toon shades and outlines the selected object. Oh, can't forget your comma. Okay, after description we have, you can put this one in, you don't need it. Warning, if you, this is an experimental add-on. Please use with caution. And then we just delete that because I don't really need a warning in this one. But like I said, it's an optional one you can put in. There are other add-ons where I feel like, yeah, you know what, this one should come with a warning. This is probably going to crash if you use this the wrong way. Okay, so yeah, after warning we can have category. And this is where it will show up in these preferences. So yeah, see, this is 3D view here, 3D view, add curve, add mesh. If you want it to line up with, I wonder who put that in there. If you want it to line up with one of these others, you can just drop it in there. So this will be, we could say it's a mesh. We could say it's an object because we'll probably be using it in object mode. So you know what? Let's call it object. Category is object. Oops. Comma. Then we've got doc URL. Again, if you want it, this is not an absolutely necessary one. But what I'll usually do is I'll put github.com/tuneup. So let's say, that's the repository or whatever. And I'll fill out a README file. If you don't know what either of those are, that's fine. That's the next episode. So yeah, if you have any sort of documentation online, like this is how you use it, this is how you install it. If you have this problem, this is probably what you're doing wrong. This is how to fix it. You can put that in here. And then we've also got the last one is, I believe it's tracker URL. And that is if you have, a page where you're making announcements of like, okay, I've got a new version up, like rock and roll, I fixed that one bug, like everybody download the new version. So that is a very long explanation of BL info. But now that we have BL info, it, and funny as that is, well, let's just make it spectral vectors. Spoectral. Now that we've got this, this can be an add-on. So whatever script, if you put that at the top, bam, you got an add-on. It's as simple as that. Typically, when I think of an add-on, I'm going to think of at least an operator and a panel, so that you have something that does something and then some way to access it visually. Although you don't need to have any visual interface, you can just add an operator and then assign a key shortcut to it. But like I said, if you want something to install, if you want something to appear in this preferences, needs the BL info, but we got that and we're all set. We kind of outlined what it is going to do earlier. And in the description there, it says outlines the selected object. So I didn't really put that in my code outline, but let's make sure that we actually have not only an object selected, but let's make sure it's something that can get toon shaded. So like if I have the light selected, tough luck to me. You can't put a toon shader on a light. You can only put a toon shader on a mesh. So let's make sure we have a mesh. If bippy.context.object, and And you know what? I think I know what it is, but let's just double check. So we can say, because they do that little convenience variable, c.object dot, what are we going to have to find out what, is it a mesh or not? We've got in here, boom, type right there. bippy.context.object.type, mesh. Okay, so if bippy.context.object.type is equal to mesh in capitals, then we can run the rest of our script. And you know what? Let's, this is not even that long a line, but let's start making our lives a little easier Python style. Let's say object is equal to bippy.context.object. And then all we have to write down here is object. Okay, so if our object is a mesh, we want to create a couple of materials, and then we want to apply them to the object. So how do we do that? Well, the way that I've found is the easiest to deal with materials, via script anyway, is to basically build them all through data. Because if you want to use context, or if you want to use operators, I mean, you're going to start running into a bunch of context errors. But what you can do is just start manipulating data directly to assemble these materials and connect all the nodes, and then slap them on your objects all ready to go. Okay, so I just said, you know, we're going to create a new material through data, but we still don't really know how to do that. So if we don't know how to do something, but we know what we want to do, we investigate how to do it through this console. So I said we want to create a material through data. So the first thing we're going to start off with is the big D for data. And then let's look at all the options that we have here. One of them is materials. Sounds like what we want. Materials dot what? Materials.new. That sounds promising. And then it takes a name argument. Okay, so we can create a new material. So let's do that. Actually, you know what? Let's do it in here as a test, and let's see what comes out. So the name will be equal to fun material. And it created a material called fun material. Okay, so we've got an object here. It's got a material. Let's see what we got. Fun material. Cool. So, all right, well, we don't have a whole lot going on here in this material. And it looks like we're not even using the nodes, but we're going to need to use the nodes, you know, in order to get this Toon Shader working. So if I click use nodes, what then happens? It looks like it automatically creates, let's take the shading. Okay, so we got a bunch of stuff already. So there's a couple of problems. One, if we create a new material, we're not by default using nodes. We have to activate nodes. Two, if we activate nodes, it's giving us this principled BSDF shader, which I'm not going to use that shader in this particular setup. So there's no reason for that to be in there. So you will find probably a couple of lines following any creation of a material in a script, and they will be the following lines. Let's see, I guess, yeah, I'll just write it in here. So let's get our material working. So this one is going to be called, this is like our Toon Shader. So I'm going to call this Toon Shader equals bippy.data or I should say Toon Shader is bippy.materials.new, and then we're going to say name is equal to, and this is what's going to show up in the over here. So I'm going to call this Toon Shader. Nice little name there. And then after that, we're going to say, and I guess this is probably a good time to clarify this. Toon Shader over here, this is a variable name that we have created in our Python script. This is how we want to deal with this material from now on in our Python script. This over here, name equals Toon Shader, this is how it's going to show up in Blender. That's it. We don't need to worry about anything else. Anything you want to do in this script, you're going to be dealing with this. Anything that's going to show up in Blender is going to show up like this. So maybe that's obvious, but just to be super clear. Okay, so we're going to say Toon Shader dot, because now we're using this, this is a sub property, sub item, whatever, of the Toon Shader. We're going to say use nodes is true. So that has the equivalent of doing what I just did over there. And you can see bit.activeMaterial use nodes true, false, true, false, true, false. So again, it's a way you can see how to get to this thing, but Blender wants you to use context, or if you do it this way, it will use context. But like I said, if we're using data over here, we can do a whole bunch of things that would otherwise throw context errors. So it's going to look a little different, but as you can see, the little, the bit at the end, dot use nodes equals true, false, dot use nodes equals true, false. That's the part that's the same. The rest is just a convenience variable. So I'm creating it through data rather than grabbing it through context, but we're still just doing the same thing ultimately. bit.context, Toon Shader dot use nodes. Okay, so I said there's going to be a couple of lines. That's the one. We're telling it to use nodes. That was the thing that I did just by clicking on it. But what's the next thing that we're going to do? We're going to get rid of that principled BSDF shader, because like I said, it's not part of this setup. We don't need it. So we're going to say again, Toon Shader. Obviously you could abbreviate that to Toon or whatever you like. Like I said, I like the longer, clearer variable names. Toon Shader dot node tree. So this is another thing that you're going to notice too. When you're working with materials, it kind of makes sense for, you get a material and then you grab the node. So you're not thinking that there's anything between you and these nodes. But when you're scripting, you have to remember that hierarchy, and you have to kind of traipse through the hierarchy to get to the things that you want. So you're not going to be accessing the nodes of a material, because a material doesn't have nodes, as contrary as that may seem to your brain or whatever. A material has node trees, which are collections of nodes, and those node trees have nodes. So whenever we want to access a particular node, it's going to look something like that. You're going to access first your material, then you're going to access the material's node tree, then you're going to access the nodes themselves. So again, just a little thing that when I first started working with this, I was like, why can't I just say the material and then the shader node? But you have to say the material, the node tree, and then the shader node.
In
Blender.
first you get the
Material.
then you'll get the
Node tree.
then you'll get the
Nodes. So next we're going to say nodes are Toon Shader dot node tree dot nodes. So another just convenience variable. This just shortens down the next lines that we're going to have to type, because unfortunately they are a little bit long. We can break them up. I kind of like leaving them on all the same lines, but you'll see where I'm going, because I'm rambling. You're rambling. You're gold blooming, Jeff.
You're gold blooming.
Gold blooming? I don't know what that means.
So side effect of using that node tree nodes.clear is that we don't actually have a material output anymore. If we were to run this, issues now. We've got our material. It's called what we want it to be called. This is all looking great. It's using nodes, but no output node. So that nodes.clear blasting out our principled BSDF node also blasted out our material output. So now this material doesn't work anymore. So every material needs a material output. So the first thing that we're going to give it is that material output. So we'll say output is nodes.new, and let's see, type type equals shader node output material. Okay. How'd I know that? Dun-dun-dun-dun. Everybody knows the answer already, but I'm going to find it. The API reference. So, oops, once again, it is opened off screen. Once again, I drag it on. So how do we know what these shader nodes are? Let's find, so yeah, let's say you didn't even know that they were shader nodes. You know they're called nodes. So let's find nodes. So bippy.types.nodes. Yeah, let's check that out. Why not? It doesn't really help us. Doesn't really tell us too much. So, oh, here we go. We're finding some things here. Compositor node, scale compositor node, geometry node. Okay, node, socket, node, socket, node, socket. So, you know, maybe you're looking for material nodes. Maybe you're looking for, well, you know, yeah, you should be looking for shader nodes. But like I said, if you don't know what you're looking for, maybe you'll go through and find a bunch of these. But you hopefully are seeing a bit of a pattern here. There's, you know, the space that it's used in, and then it's called node. So if we want to find this shader node, let's type in shader node. All together, bippy.types.shader node. Let's take a look at this one. Okay, material shader node. And there we go, subclasses. So here is our list of all of the shader nodes. And actually, if we go back here, we can probably, yeah. So this is maybe even an easier way to just read it through this list rather than the little cramped one. But like I said, there's a few different ways you can browse it. What I'm going to do now is I know that it's called output that I'm looking for. So I'm going to type in output. And I see shader node output AOV. Oh, output material. Okay, shader node output material. There we go. Did I already even type that in the script and it took me that long to find it? Yes, I did. So yeah, that is the one that we need, and that is how you find out what it's called. And then for any other node, you just kind of need to go in and, you know, mess around. So what's an easier way than doing that? Easier way would be go into shading. Let's set this to info. We'll drag this around. And then in our material, doesn't matter what material we use, let's add the node that we want to use. Bang, material output, shader node, output material. So it tells you exactly what to do. It tells you exactly what it's called. There's two different ways you can figure out what the thing you want to do is called. So a lot of the times you'll be able to kind of grasp the basic pattern of the Blender naming system, like, you know, shader node, output material. So when we put it down, it's called material output. So a bit of Yoda talk there, but basically shader node and then the thing that it is. As always, the devil is in the details, and there are exceptions to that. And some of the most popular nodes are among those exceptions. So one that you'll see in, let's see, or it's converter, isn't it? Converter color ramp. So color ramp you'll see in a cajillion different scripts, different materials. What's it called? It's called shader node color ramp. Oh, no, it's not called shader node color ramp. It's called shader node val to RGB.
So
yeah, like I said, there's times where you'll want to have just the whole list and kind of go, okay, which one, you know, what are all my options? Maybe you don't want to add every single one individually. But there are other times when it's just easier to just add the exact node that you want. You figure out exactly what it's called, and boom, you're laughing from there. So I'm going to get rid of both of these because I want to be able to test my script. So I want to see, you know, what shows up when we run this. So that gives us a material output. Yeah, I think that next one is just the color ramp. So color ramp, oops. Oh, you know what? Let's be consistent. We'll do an underscore in between. Color ramp equals nodes.new. Type is shader node val to RGB. Next we need, and like I said, this is, you know, I don't expect you to know the nodes that you want to throw in. This is repeating a workflow that I have done a bunch of times before, so I know exactly which nodes I'm looking for. I think it's a shader to RGB that we need next. So I know exactly which nodes I'm looking for. I think it's a shader to RGB that we need next. But again, let's pop into this material. Here, let's run. Let's see what happens. So we run it, pop back in. Do we have anything? I don't see anything here. But do we have another one called Toon Shader? Yeah, we do. And does it have the right nodes? And it does. Looking great. Okay, yeah, so I forgot that we will be creating a duplicate material each time. But like I said, this is our test. This is where we're figuring out how this add-on works. We're going to mess this blend file right up. And then we're just going to, save our script and go File, New, and erase all of this malarkey that we're creating here. Just erase this entire mess. Except for, of course, our script. So yeah, like I said, there's a couple of things. So let's just, actually, let's do this in the one that's currently applied to the material, or to the object. So we'll add a material output. We will add a converter color ramp. Plug that in. We will add a diffuse shader. And then we will add a shader to RGB. So those were the last ones I think that I needed to know about. So diffuse shader. So again, I'll copy this in. It's not going to end up being, exactly the way it is in the info view, but it is convenient enough to drop that in. So the last one I added was the shader to RGB. Does that? Yeah, I got the diffuse. Let's just add it again. Add shader, or no, converter, right? Yeah, shader to RGB. Shader node, shader to RGB. Okay, it's just literally that. And is that it? I've got my output, I've got my color ramp, I've got my shader to RGB, and I've got my diffuse. Yeah, so let's just clean this up a little bit. So like I said, you can kind of use these quotes interchangeably. You can see I'm just using the singles, they're using the doubles down here. Ideally, you want to maintain consistency, at least with your own code, if not with wider standards. But if it works, then it works. And that's a dirty little secret. Don't tell anybody I told you that. Okay, so this one's going to be called diffuse. Oops. Diffuse is nodes.new. And shader to RGB is nodes.new. And let's clean up the end of this. Okay, so I think we've got then all of our nodes that we need. So let's run this again. Let's see what happens. We go into our shading tab. We should have another one called Toon Shader. And ooh, I love it. Okay. So we're getting there. We're not there yet, obviously, but we're getting there. So what else do we have to do to make this a Toon Shader? Well, obviously our nodes are not connected, so we need to connect them. So let's figure that out, I guess, next. Let's figure out how to get the nodes down and connect them. So we said nodes is toonshader.nodes. What we can also say is links is toonshader .node tree .links. So again, just a little way to shorten that. And the way we're going to connect them is by creating a new link. So we'll go links.new. And this is where we start to get into the kind of little tricky bits. Or, I mean, it's not, again, it's not tricky once you know it, but to figure out how to get here is sometimes a little tricky. So how do we create a link? So we need to tell Blender we're creating a new link, which we've done, and now we need to tell it from where to where. And that is going to mean two pieces of information, from which node and from which output. So let's go back, let's check out our nodes. So this is how we want the connection to look. I know how I want this, these nodes to be plugged in. So we need to go from the output of the diffuse BSDF into the input of the shader. We need to go from the color output on shader to RGB to the factor on color ramp. And we need to go from color to material output. So what I am going to do is I am going to work backwards. I can't remember why this was the system that worked best for me, but I find when I work from the output back, then that keeps everything nice and easy, and I can kind of trace a single path at a time. It works really well for when you start scripting more complex materials. But yeah, this is just going to be the way that I show you, and the beautiful thing about code is, if you don't like it, you can code it your own way. So we're going to say that we need to connect the first output on the material, the first input on the material to the first output on the color ramp. So we have to go out from the first output on the color ramp to the first input on the mix shader. So we're going to say, because we referred to it as color ramp up here, we can say color ramp dot outputs. So you're going to be addressing a collection of outputs. So you might say, okay, I just want to go to output 1, so let's just put output 1. But the way that you do that is you say, okay, I need to access the outputs. Let's go to the output section. And now that we're in the output section, we need to select which one we want. So in code, the first number that you can access is 0. So if you've got a list, you know, the list starts with 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you want to get the item number 1 in the list, it's actually item number 0 as far as the computer is concerned. So we want to go from the first output on the color ramp to the, let's see, output dot, and you can probably guess what the pattern is, inputs, 0. So this creates a link from the first output on the color ramp to the first input on our material output node. And then if we follow that logic on through, we can continue to link up our materials, our nodes. So next up, what do we need? So we got that. So let's connect the shader to RGB to the color ramp. So we said shader to RGB dot outputs 0 to color ramp dot inputs 0. Okay, and I'm going to leave the diffuse unconnected for right now. So we can see in this one that we did manually, I just plugged these in, you know, and arranged these nodes myself. We've connected all 4 in sequence. So I'm going to run this script before we have all 4 connected and see what we get. Let's go back. Toon Shader 03. Okay, so they're all stacked up in that pile like we're used to seeing. That's connected. That's not connected. And the rest are connected. Okay. So we can see now that this script is working exactly how we intended it to do, exactly how we wanted it to work. And the last thing that we need to do is connect our diffuse to our shader to RGB. So let's do that. Links.new diffuse.outputs 0 to, what was it, shader to RGB. Dot inputs 0. Okay. You know what? Let's run it again. And then we should have a 4th one down here. And it looks like everything is all connected exactly the way we wanted it to go. So let's mess with that just a little, just so you can kind of see how it works. So let's say some of them have, you know, more than one input, more than one output. Let's start kind of messing with that. So we'll say shader to RGB outputs on 1. Color ramp outputs on 1, and it goes to the output input 2. Let's see how this goes. Shader will go to our newly created material that we just made it through script, and look at that. Same nodes, but we've got different outputs connected. So hopefully now you can kind of see the way to work with materials, the way to work with nodes, the way to get them all connected. But we still have a few issues here. It doesn't look like a Toon Shader. What's going on? So the thing that distinguishes a Toon Shader is that banded lighting that I was talking about. And the way that you get that is by changing some of the settings on your color ramp. So we're going to change linear to constant, and then we can see a little bit of what we're dealing with. Maybe we'll get the light a little bit closer. Am I in rendered mode? do I have? Oh, whoops. Cut those. Yeah, we want to actually plug it into the correct sockets. And maybe I should change this in our script before we get too far. Everything back to 0. Back to 0, folks. Nothing to see here. Okay, so I need to make it a constant. And what is the value going to be? Yeah, maybe I want this up high. And then I'm going to want like a mid-tone in between. So I'm going to add a new color. And I'm going to make it like a gray, kind of. And then, yeah, get that one up there. Have mostly this one. And then, yeah, like shadows on the back. Sure. That looks like a fine Toon Shader. So let's make this an easier number to deal with. Let's make this one a nice, easy number to deal with. Okay. Now we've got our setup pretty much what we want. How do we make that happen in script? So you could probably see as we were going along, some stuff was happening here. So let's shrink this on over. And yeah, that might just be the best we're getting. Okay, so if you ever are not sure about how to do something and you have done it before, just do it again. So let's add a new converter, color ramp. So we already know how to do that. That's not the big deal. That's not the thing we need to know. So we need to make it a constant. What does that look like in script? So let's copy this. And I'm just going to throw this at the bottom for now, but we are going to have to sort of integrate this into our script. So we moved these around. So this one we moved to 0.9, I think. So yeah, then move that to 0.9. That didn't seem to do anything. Let's see if we type it in, 0.9. Okay, so if we type it in, it gives us the change that we made. So let's put that in there. And what else did we do? Okay, yeah, we added one. And did that? Looks like it didn't update, whatever. And then we changed its color. So those are the things that we want to do. And this is our lead on how to do it. So whenever we want to access the Toon Shader, like I said, we don't need to type in all this because we've already created that convenience variable. So we can get rid of all of this and just say Toon Shader. So toonshader.nodetree.nodes. Wait a minute. We already have a reference to our color ramp. So we don't even need all of that. We can just shorten all of this down to color ramp. And this is another one of those like, oh, hey, wait a minute, what? A color ramp has a color ramp. So anytime you need to deal with a color ramp, you're going to be dealing with color ramp.colorRamp. So again, you think you can deal with the material.nodes. Nope, you got to deal with the material.nodetree.nodes. You think you can deal with the color ramp? No, you got to deal with the color ramp.colorRamp. So you can take my word for it. You can try it in the code yourself, but yeah, you got to deal with the color ramp.colorRamp. So what am I going to do now? I'm going to copy this. The way we shortened all of this stuff, I'm going to drop it in there. So let's see what this makes, because I think we're going to have ourselves a bit of an issue. So this should be number 6. Okay, let's check it all out. Can expand this out. Maybe we should start figuring out how to get these spaced out a little too, so they're not so bad. So this is not exactly what we wanted. We wanted to have this sort of Neapolitan ice cream looking thing. What we got was just 2 colors. And what happened is we created a new stop on the color ramp, a new element on the color ramp with our mouse. We did it in Blender, and then we were copying and pasting all the stuff that got spat out to the info view, but that wasn't one of the things that got spat out to the info view. I'm not sure why, but yeah, creating that new element in the color ramp, it just wasn't recorded. So basically we said, start adjusting this middle one, move this one to here, and then adjust this middle one to this color, but we never even created that middle one. So we'll try it again. Created it again, move it around. There's no indication that anything happened in our info view. So we need to figure out from the API how to do this. and color ramp. Color mapping dot color ramp. Shader node valued RGB. So there we go. We've got our color ramp. Let's see. Yeah, it looks like it's a color ramp type. So let's investigate the color ramp type. And then we have elements, color ramp element. Okay. We've got alpha and position. And okay, here down, color ramp elements dot new. So we can add a color ramp element by saying color ramp dot new. So that is what we have to do. So we will say color ramp dot elements dot new, and so this is another little tricky thing. This is maybe it's taken a lot longer to explain all these little nuances than I thought it would. The color ramp will change the index of all of the other elements based on creating a new one. I'm going to click on the black one, it's 0. I'm going to click on the gray one, it's 1. I'm going to add one in between. Now the gray one is 2. Going to add that one. Now the gray one is 3. Add another one. Now the gray one is 4. So this one, it hasn't changed position. It hasn't changed color. But because we've added more to this color ramp, it has changed index. So, you know, we made the thing. We said, okay, that one that's in number 1, change that, you know, so that it's right there. And we put it in the right position, and it was the white color. And then we said the one that's in position number 1, change it to gray. So what if we say the one that's in position number 1, put it to 9, and then we'll say make a new one, which will change the meaning of the one that is in position number 1, and means that we can shift it. Oh, we're getting sneaky now. To, where did I say it should go? I think it's like 0.2 or 0.3 or something. 0.2. Okay, so 0.2. So let's see what happens now.
No, you can't. Don't even try.
Oh, whoops. Okay, so I need to specify that in here. Position equals 0, 2. So we'll cut that out, paste that in, and get rid of this. See how that works. Seems like it worked. Go to our, oh, we're on number 8 now. All right, let's see it. Oh, I'm liking it. I'm liking it. Okay. That's it. We got our Toon Shader material done. Now let's create another material. So, whoops. This one's going to be called Outline. So outline, and we're going to do this basically exactly the same way we did before. Outline is bippy.data.materials.new. Name is outline. And then we're going to say outline dot use nodes is true. We're going to say outline dot node tree dot nodes dot clear, and that's a little function there. And then we're going to say nodes equals outline. Oh, forgot my space. Outline dot node tree dot nodes. So up here I said nodes is toonshader.nodetree.nodes. And down here I'm saying nodes is outline.nodetree.nodes. And basically what's happening is up here we're dealing with this variable called nodes. We do all the stuff that we need to do, and then down here we're kind of redeclaring or changing the what the nodes variable is, and then we can you know, add whatever we want to do down here. And this is the part that I was saying about, like, this is, you know, one of the really nice things, because this will let us reuse a little bit of code. So I could have just copied a bunch of this, you know, and changed Toon Shader to outline, like I'm doing right now. I can just copy this because we need a material output. So output, there we go. And then what we also need, we'll need one more. Yeah, let's throw this down, and then I'll show you what else we need. So we'll set our material not to Toon Shader, but to the newly created outline material. And the way to get the easiest outline is to add an emission shader, connect it, and change its color to black. So we've got, yeah, we already know how to connect it using links. That's the command to set the color to black, so that's the one that we need to remember. And, oh, what else do we need? Oh, we needed the name of the node, or what it's called. And it is a shader node emission. Okay. So we're going to say emission equals nodes.new. Type is shader node emission. And that takes care of that. And then we need, yeah, so we can just shorten all this, because again, the material outline emission node, we already have a reference to that in our code. It's right there. So we can just say that, and that will make the color black. And then all we need to do is say, let's go up here, because I'm so lazy, and you will be too. And outline links is outline.nodetree.nodes. And what are we going to do? I'm just going to copy and paste this too and change it, because all we need to do is link the emission to the output. Booyah. So that should give us now a an outline material that's set up the way we want it to be. There we go, outline.001, and it's black, it's connected. We love it. We are happy. So we are now a chunk of the way through this add-on that we wanted to make. So what was the next step? We created the two materials, and now we have to add them to our object. So we already have a reference to our object up there. We said it's bippy.context.object is object. So all we have to say is object dot data dot materials, the same way we did bippy.data.materials, dot append, and then we're going to add each material. So the first one I'm going to add is the Toon Shader, and the next one I'm going to add, I'm just going to copy this, and, oops, don't want any extra spaces. The next one I'm going to add is the outline. Let's see how that works. Boom! Okay, so let's wipe all these materials out. Boom, click on our thing, running our script. We got a Toon Shader, and we got an outline, and they're working exactly the way we want them to. Nice. So the next thing we have to add is the modifier. So as always, if we know how to do it in Blender, let's just try doing it first. So we need to add a Solidify modifier. What does that look like? bippy.ops.object.modifier.add. Okay. So, you know, if you're seeing ops and you're going, is that going to give us trouble? I don't think it will, but good instinct. And if you weren't, don't worry about it, because it won't give us trouble. Okay, so we're going to, we can just add this operator in, but what you can do is you can initialize a variable by calling an operator. So the same way I said, you know, output equals this new node, we're going to say, let's say, Solidify is this operator. And then we can access Solidify, because what we're going to need to do is start changing some of these options. So we go down to normals. We need to flip the normals. And under materials, we need to offset the material index. So that should, actually, should that work? So that gives us our Solidify, and I made all the changes that I needed to do there. So we'll get those in there. The material offset. And like I said, we've already got a reference to our Solidify, so we'll just do this. Make our lines nice and short. I didn't need to look this up in the API because I just sort of did it by hand. Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of these materials, run our script, see what happens. Huh. Set object has no attribute use flip normals. I think I did these modifiers wrong. Yes. Okay. No, you know what? We can't do that. We have to grab that variable on the next line. So what we have to do is say solidify is object dot, is it object dot modifiers? Yeah, it is. Object dot modifiers. And then we're going to need to give it by the name that it wants to be called. So it is solidify. And I believe that's what it wants me to do. So I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to get rid of these. And let's see if this works. And it looks like it did. I didn't get an error message. And let's see. Normals flipped. Material index offset. Okay, cool. So you might be looking at this and going like, okay, it's capitals up here. It's, you know, lowercase, or like, why is that different? This is referring to the type, the modifier type, which is in block capitals. It's one of those enum variables like we were looking at in the API in the last episode. This one is referring to the name. So if we were to say have two solidify modifiers, the second one is going to be called solidify.001. So if you wanted to create another, you would still create it with this. But then if you wanted to access this one, you would call it, oops. You would call it like that. You would match the name. Okay, so we've got almost everything that we wanted, but as you can see, it is not looking like, you know, a cartoony outlined cube. It's just solid black again. It looks the same way as it did when we didn't even have a material output, let alone all this other code here. So there is an issue, but what is the issue? We have not set up our outline material properly is the issue. What we need to do is we need to set the backface culling option on. And again, we don't need to go into exactly how Toon Shaders work and exactly how and why this works. This is just one quirk of the Toon Shader setup. So we forgot to turn that on. We can turn it on, and now we see there's a slim black outline followed by this thick banded light. So what did we do there? We turned backface culling on, and it says bippy.context.object. So again, we get this big long command, and if we try to just throw this in our script, this may not necessarily work, because what we really want to do is just say, you know, the outline material needs to use backface culling. And I got a little section up here where we're talking about outline use this, outline use that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say, while we're setting all that up, why don't we set this up to use backface culling? Okay, so that should give us exactly the Toon Shader that we are looking for. Again, let's clear these out. Let's do a little test. So we just got our plain cube in standard viewport mode, run our script, and we've instantly got a black outline. And let's go into our layout to view this, I guess. So as you can see, in solid viewport mode, nothing. We wouldn't know if it was working or not. We switch into rendered view, and now we can see that outline, and we can see the banded light. So this is a line that will make that happen if you are in the right context. So I think, yeah, you know, I think this will fail. Let's see it. Yeah. So it failed because the text editor doesn't have a rendered shading type. The plus side is we're not going to be running this in the text editor. We're going to be running this in the 3D viewport, which does have a rendered shading type. So even though this isn't going to work in our script, this will actually work in the final add-on. But because it's going to cause us a bunch of errors for right now, I'm just going to put a little comment next to it. So it's not going to be affecting our script. We can run it again, and it should run no problems. And actually, we'll have to, yeah, clear out all of this stuff first if we want it to. Whoa. Yeah, so let's try it again. And yeah, back to working perfectly. So we'll throw that in at the end once we've got our whole UI, once it's set up in the 3D viewport. But for right now, we'll just kind of tuck this away in the code. Or we can even, maybe we'll put it up top somewhere. And we'll say, paste it in there. Say, this line will set the viewport to rendered mode. And what else do we need here, really? I think we got it all figured out. I think we just need to kind of get our UI happening, and then this is it. So we can make this a function. We can make this an operator. How are we going to get this, in the easiest way into an add-on? That is where those not templates exactly, but the kind of the simplest operator and simplest panel things that I was showing you in the past are going to come in handy. Because we've got this function now. We know exactly what we want to do. We've laid it out. We've tested it all out. Every time we run this script, it does what we want it to do. But now we need to get it into a button. Now we need to get it into Blender. So we don't really need to mess around too much with what we've got. We just want to kind of say, okay, plonk, there you go, and wrap it up, put a bow on it. So let's go find those. And we'll go to, function into an operator and simplest UI panel. So let's copy these. Pop that down there. So we've got import Bippy up top. We don't really need that. And I'm just going to get rid of a bunch of these comments, because I just want this to be nice and clean. You can always download these files if you want, and put anything that you need in there. So what are we going to say? We're going to say, let's make this a function. So we'll say define tune up. And then we're going to select this whole thing. We're going to indent it by 1. So I just selected it all and hit tab. So that is now the function called tune up. So when we execute our code, we want to say, did I do all lowercase? Yes, I did. Tune up. It'll execute that function. And we want it to be object dot tune up operator. And the BL label will be tune up. And the description will be adds a Toon Shader and outline to the selected object. And let's call it tune up operator, which means we need to copy and paste this down here. Okay, and I think that gives us our function. So we've got the code that now works. We've got we've got our operator set up. We need to set up now a little bit of UI. So we need our panel now. Let's go over here, copy this panel. And again, we're going to be obliterating most of this. So we don't need 2 register functions. We don't need that stuff. We're going to get rid of those. And again, let's blast out all of these. I believe, it's going to go where we want it to go anyway. View 3D UI in the sidebar there. So let's get rid of all of that. And we don't need it to define context, category. Okay, yeah. So let's start actually customizing this. So what do we want to call it? We want to call it the tune-up panel. And we don't need to import Bippy because we did that up top. We'll just call it Tune Up UI panel. The label will be tune up, and so will the category. PT tune up. Okay, we will now copy this, make sure that we are registering this as well. So this is, once you start having more than one class that you're trying to register at a time, this is going to be a really nice way to do it for you, because you don't really want to have to add, you know, bippy.utils.register blah, 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 every time. What you can do is say for CLS in classes, and then say bippy.register classes, and then we're going to register CLS. And so why am I writing CLS for a single class instead of just writing class? Because as you can see up here, class is a protected keyword. So that will do something that tells, you know, Python, hey, you need to pay attention. This next thing is not just text. It's not just whatever. This is, you know, the name of the class. So down here, we can't just use the word class. So we abbreviate it with CLS just so that we have something that's similar without triggering that, that keyword. So for CLS and classes, so that way we can just register the whole list at once. So this is our ID name. This is what we need to go in our operator. And I believe when we run this, it should give us a panel, I think. Let's see. Tune up. Oh, look at that. Isn't it beautiful? Isn't it wonderful? Okay, let's test it on a sphere. Oh, neat. All right, so very cool. I'm pretty happy. I'm also noticing a handful of issues. So let's look now. So really, this is, you know, this is working. There are issues that we need to fix, to tweak, but we have now gone from a Brainstorm to a working Blender add-on. So this could be your, you know, version 001. And then maybe, let's see, let's try Taurus. Nifty. Maybe in, you know, your next version, you can adjust some of those, fix some of those issues. So like an issue that I'm seeing right now is, I didn't really notice it with the cube, but everything is flat shaded, which is not really going to give it too much of a toon shaded look. So if we go object shade smooth, there we're getting much more of a you know, toon shaded look. So that could be an addition that we throw into this operator to make it go, you know, a little. So yeah, bippy.ops.object.shadesmooth. Why don't we just say that right off the top? Copy that. And let's try this. So now if we add a monkey, we can see it's got flat shading. Let's just turn you around, Suzanne. But if we run our operator on it, now it's got smooth shading. Oh yeah, and what did I say? There was that line that we were going to throw in. So we're going to cut that out from the top, and let's throw it in at the bottom here. Paste. Oh yeah, and we don't need the comment. We do need the line, and we have to make sure that it's indented at the same level as the code we want it to run with. And we want it to run at the end of this operator. Okay, so let's try that. And I'm going to go back into layout. Going to go to, actually, let's, yeah, delete the Suzanne. Let's add a whole new Suzanne. Monkey, rotate you around. So yeah, again, we can see flat shaded. We're in solid view. And now we're in rendered view with a smooth shaded monkey. So that is our add-on. I will upload this to GitHub. And in the next episode, we're going to talk about GitHub, how to use it, and why scripting in Blender is maybe not the best place to write your full add-ons, and where a better place might be. Na, 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 na. Okay, thanks. Hope you enjoyed. Put links to everything in the description, and I'll see you next time for the final episode in the What's Bippy series. Bye.